Uh, yeah, so it's not such a easy answer. Now, Achronim, the rabbis of today, Gedolim, will tell you that it's forbidden to go into a Reform synagogue. They also tell you that it's forbidden to go to a conservative synagogue. The more
idol worship, they say it's idol worship, no?
No, they won't say it's idol worship. They'll say it's kafira, that it's...
now, they don't necessarily believe Torah is from Hashem.
Correct. So that's the issue. I mean, now kafira is also a form of avodah zarah, but it's more semantics. But I've even heard very Haredi rabbis say that you can't walk into a synagogue where the bima is in the front of the synagogue, because that is the way the Reform movement started doing it in Germany 150 years ago. It would move the bima to the front.
The bima is where the head chazan would read and daven and
Torah. Not necessarily. But that's also what a lot of Orthodox synagogues do nowadays, but they're not supposed to do that. Like the more Haredi synagogues, the person leading the davening will daven from a stender. So they will daven in the front, but they'll read the Torah in the middle. So the bima is where you read the Torah from. But Reform, they created the custom to have an elevated platform in the front of the synagogue, and from there, both lead the davening and read from the Sefer Torah. It was considered the ways of the heretics or something. So many Haredi rabbis that would say that it's forbidden to enter an Orthodox synagogue that was organized like that. Now, I've entered many synagogues. I remember when I lived in Virginia, KBI, their synagogue, they had the bima up on the platform in front. And I know that many Haredi Jews, I think some Satmar guys came into town, they wouldn't daven there. But that's more sort of splitting hairs. There's no set way to have a synagogue. The Rambam sort of slightly touches on it, but he doesn't mention any of this stuff. Heck, in the time of the Rambam, people didn't have chairs. I mean, they had chairs, but they just didn't have chairs in the synagogue. He speaks about people bringing mats because they would prostrate. So a synagogue resembled a mosque back then. And it was only till the Jews in Europe became the majority that they changed the custom, or I guess the Sephardi Jews sort of followed suit, because it's cold to sit on a floor in Europe. I'll tell you, most people who come to convert are religiously mature. We're not catering to people here who just for some reason happen to like Matisyahu or falafel and shawarma and Israeli music. I've met many people like this, by the way, but I'm pretty sure those aren't people who are attracted to my videos. I think that my student typically resembles a more religiously mature, rational person who's able to sit through a lecture and extract what he finds beneficial and toss out the nonsense. All academics have to do that. But if you find someone who gets offended only because some rabbi says something, you must be very new to Judaism, because every rabbi has something that you don't agree with. And if you find a rabbi that you feel that you agree with everything on, then you have a lot more to learn. Unless he's really just trying to brainwash you. And that's what a lot of these YouTube rabbis do, where they tell you that only I teach Torah, or me and my two other friends, we're the only ones who teach Torah, and everyone else is wrong. Now, he could say it. The problem is if you believe it. Whenever
he has the power only if you give it to him.
Yeah. I live in a Jewish community, a very large Jewish community, and I go to many shiurim, and the rabbi giving the class knows I don't believe everything he teaches, and it's cool. Who in a Jewish community agrees with people 100%? This only happens on the YouTube world because they don't know enough Jews. Now, there are a lot of rabbis now on the internet, audio lectures, Torah Anytime, yutorah.org, or on YouTube, but only around 10 of them get all the traffic. So this is like the 80-20 rule, but amongst rabbis. 20% of men get 80% of women. So 20% of rabbis get 80% of the audience on social media. But there's good rabbis out there. You just have to sort of sift them out. But they're not as demagogic. They're not trying to write other rabbis off and tell you not to listen to this. They're rabbis who teach Torah by rabbis for rabbis. And that's really what you guys should be listening to, because that should be your goal. And whatever you do in life, try to be the best at it. Now, assuming that being a rabbi is the biggest thing you could become in the Jewish world, I assume, well, even though the vast majority of Torah scholars in Israel don't have smicha, this is something they get when they make Yeridah, when they come to America because they need to get a job. you should strive to at least be on the level of what people consider a rabbi. That's the goal.
Well, I appreciate that answer. We have Evelyn. Is that how you pronounce your name? I invited her. I got in contact with her on Facebook because she said she had difficulties with conversion or problems with it at least. So thank you for coming by. If you have questions, please speak. Thank you for coming. We got a bunch of people in the Callie Jones. Thank you for coming by. John from PA. So if you have any questions, please speak up. Don't sit there and look beautiful. Participate. We love you, and we would love to hear from you. So, thank you. We say Michael out there in the chat says, I understand that a Jew needs to be part of a community, but why can't a person just establish a new community by encouraging non-observant Jews in the area to become more observant?
I think it's practical. I don't think it's ethically rational to distinguish people who happen to have Jewish blood from Gentiles who also want to be observant. I mean, why don't you get a group of Gentiles keeping Torah, and that when you have enough of them to form a community, bring 3 rabbis over, convert them all, or convert 3 of you guys, and you guys could form your own Beit Din and keep on building your community and making people Jewish. It says nowhere that you need to be a rabbi to perform a conversion. But this notion that we should be targeting people who are born Jewish and irreligious, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have a hard time making irreligious Jews religious. It's very difficult. It's a lot easier to target Messianics because they already believe in Torah. Irreligious Jews, I worked in outreach in Jerusalem at Hebrew University, doing outreach, and it's so hard because you're confronting pessimistic agnostics, atheists. These aren't Bible-believing people. Now, the people you do get for your shiurim are people who would have come anyways, people who have some sort of religious backbone, so you could sort of put them to some guilt trip to come to your Torah class. And that's what they do. That's not what I did, but they'll say like, oh, wouldn't it make your grandmother happy if you dated a Jewish girl? Wouldn't it make your grandmother happy if you like at least learned a little bit of Torah? Because that's assuming everyone's grandmother was religious. Most small synagogues, their minyanim, or most small communities, their minyan is typically made up of people who are 80 plus, not young Jews. Why? Because people who are old, they see the writing on the wall and they feel like I've behaved unethically my whole life. I lived an irreligious existence, and now the time's counting down. It's time for me to get religious. I don't find that impressive to have a synagogue full of old people. I love it when I see a synagogue full of young people, people who could be out there, who have the energy to do wrong but choose to do the right thing. Could be doing anything, but they're devoting a few minutes a day to talk to God. At least get in the right framework mentally to be able to represent God properly. That's impressive. And I'll tell you, even old people will tell you this. Now, clearly, people just go to synagogues nowadays to say Kaddish. If that's the purpose of building a synagogue, then it's not even worth it. If you're going to start a community, it should first revolve around Shabbos. Shabbos has made more people religious than any page in the Gemara, 100%. Acknowledging that God labored for 6 days and rested on the 7th. Realizing that you're not a piece of cosmic garbage, that there's a purpose in this world. 1 day of rest, for some reason, all this told over in front of food makes people want to be more religious and want to have a religious family. So I would encourage people tomorrow, go on Craigslist, go on Facebook, say, anybody in my neighborhood, in my part of town, come for Shabbos. Sabbath meals, come sing Jewish songs, we'll study the Bible, have a Jewish experience. And you know what? Clearly, the vast majority of people you're going to get are going to be people who are not Jewish, probably Messianics and Christians, but who cares? That you're not there to teach Christianity. You're there to teach Torah, and you're there to enjoy a Sabbath meal with other like-minded religious individuals, even though you don't agree with them completely clearly. You don't believe in Jesus. They may believe in Jesus. It's fine. You're here to study the Torah. And, of course, you're going to have to grow some thick skin. Don't lose your temper, when they start yelling Yeshua. I used to have a synagogue here in North Miami Beach, and that's exactly what I did. On Shabbat, we'd have like 40 or 50 people who would respond to my ads on telephone posts. And, of course, they were Christians, and they would talk about Jesus. But I would still teach on the Parsha, but we would sing songs, And a lot of those people ended up converting and dropping JC. Even if they didn't drop JC, but they came that step closer, that seed was planted, that they could say that, you know what, I know Jews, and Jews are very welcoming, and they're very loving, and they're just like me. It's like you've diffused a anti-Semitic situation in the future that night by giving a decent face to Jews and Judaism. That would be your first bet. What's the point of creating a minyan? I mean, you could daven at home. Well, davening with a minyan is a great thing, okay, but it's overrated. That's not what being Jewish is about.
Amen.
Now, there's the notion of the Varsha B'Kedusha, words of holiness that you could only say with a minyan, that the rabbis decreed it like this. I mean, it's not like this in the Torah. The Torah doesn't talk about prayer. But the Shema is not even considered a prayer. Tefillah, according to halacha, is only the Amidah. Now, prayer is a great thing, right? I mean, it's a shame what it's become nowadays, because Jews really don't pray nowadays. They recite. There used to be a part of Jewish prayer called Nefilat HaPayim, also known as Tachanun, where you were allowed to talk to God one-on-one. There was a little time of the liturgy, like a little section, where you would give your supplications over to God personally without having to recite what the rabbis prepared for you. But the rabbis, not in Talmudic times, much later, rabbis who didn't have smicha, I mean real smicha going back to Moshe Rabbeinu, even wrote what you should say at that time. So there is no time now for personal prayer. But people never talk about this. Like if you guys ever daven in an Orthodox shul, it's when people put their arm down. Tachanun. That's what Tachanun means. Tachanunim means supplications. That you're supposed to talk to God one-on-one. No, but the rabbis thought they knew better. Of course, it's not a halacha what they did during Tachanun. Screw what the art scroll tells you to say. That's your time to talk to God. No rabbi could step in and say what's good for you. Like the heck, Of course, they put like some Tehillim there. That's your time that you talk to God one-on-one. Put the reciting aside, okay? Because there's already too much stuff to recite. Shachris really should be done in like 20 minutes, and it takes like an hour. It's
usual.
Korbanos, and it's like all these things aren't even halacha.
It's usually 40 minutes. Then it's usually an hour Mondays and Thursdays.
Sure, Pesukah de Zimra is also not a halacha. Most people don't know that. It's nice. It's a bunch of Tehillim, but it's a minhag. Anyways, it's always good to know distinctions.
We got a couple of people here that want to speak here, Rav. We got